value your T-bill in 5 days. At the end of 5 days, how much is on the worth?
You have 500 extra.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So 5,500. After 5 days, you are expecting to earn 5,500. But the markets, because they are trading your T-bills actively, there's a market price.
Yeah.
So you either make more money or you lose money.
Yeah.
Now the SEC directive is saying that do not value your T-bills according to how initially how you were expecting to value it.
Yeah.
Value it in such a way that if you wanted to sell it today, how much would market price your T-bills? So after 5 days, you're expecting it to be 5,500. But then you have to sell it on the market.
Yeah.
So let's assume the market thinks that the T-bills are not worth what you think they are worth. So they'll give you a price when you say instead of 5,500, you get 5,300 for it. In that regard, you have lost 200. So that's how the whole thing is. Okay. I think we're ready to go. That makes sense. That does make sense.
What should you pay? What should you buy in the first place? What your estimate is much lower than how much you got from it.
No, you still get your 5,000 back, but then the interest is lower.
There are cases that you
some
can
people
even
Oh,
mad.
So
we are going like.
Okay, let's do that.
What's the outline? Presentation first.
No. We're gonna talk. You mentioned that you want to find out how this all started. So Kweku.
So just go straight into the conversation.
Yeah.
But you said there's a presentation. Are you?
No, I think we have to go on
without this.
I think that was easy.
Okay.
I think basically whatever will come in during the conversation or the presentation, we're just talking.
Okay. Yeah. So do you want to introduce the guest, or should I do? Introduce the thing, introduce us, then you. You want to introduce the thing, so you start. Okay. She starts on it.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. We're so sorry for the delay, but all in all, we are absolutely ready and excited to have this informative webinar with you. My name is Afi and I'm joined by my co-host Zuu Bedema, and today we'll be having a good and important conversation about the finances of the country, really. So this is like a literacy type of thing where we want to understand what exactly is going on, especially with the current debt and why things are happening the way they're happening. So, Zuu, how are you feeling?
I'm very excited. There's so many questions I have, there's so much I want to learn, and I feel like we have the best panel, to join us and help us understand what's going on.
That's true, because left to Zuu and I don't think we can give you guys the right answers.
We can't tell you what's going on.
All we know is that things make a bit shaky, and we need to understand exactly what is happening. Yeah. So Zuu, please introduce the guest we have today.
So today we have Mr. Elikem Deku. He's a fixed income trader. I don't know. Do you want me to tell them?
No.
We can do that.
The compliments are already.
Also with us, we have Mr. Kweku Adoboli, who's an investment manager. So we have people who know what they're talking about.
Graduates and grad ones.
We're not just here to have a.
I think, I know. Yeah.
We know what we're talking about, and we live here. Before we go here, so that's why we're here.
And also, you can ask questions via the link. So make sure you ask questions, and then we'll ask our guests as well, so that everybody can get educated. How are you guys feeling?
Yeah, good. It's always good to talk finance, right?
So before we go deep, why finance? Why are you guys into finance? I want to start with you.
Oh, me, I've always been a science student. Then I saw the light. Forget to go where the money was.
Where the money was.
Forget being a doctor. It's going to finance and make some money.
Right.
Yeah, so that, you know what? That's the problem, right? I didn't end up in finance for money. I kind of got there by mistake.
Right.
I was trying to figure out I wanted to do an internship to figure out how business worked, and then once you got there, solving the problem solving and the pace of the work and the depth of thinking required made it an exciting place to be. So I ended up staying.
Yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, we have a lot of things we want to talk about. I think the first question I have is, what's happening?
What is happening?
Every time I turn on the radio or the TV, we're talking about debt.
And then they are losing their money.
What's going on? Please help us understand.
And as much as possible, please break it down.
Yeah, don't be
Because Charlie,
Yeah,
I don't
it's
really
not
have
easy.
experience. Yeah.
Okay, so it's always difficult to know where to start the story. You know, Ghana's a young country and it's a young economy. And as a result of being young, it takes time for systems, processes, and institutions to build. So when you're designing a financial economy, there are various pillars that economy has to have. And it's taking time for Ghana to develop all of those. As a result, every few years, we kind of run out of money. And what does that really mean? So we're kind of in that phase now where we sort of run out of money. But what does it really mean? Because everyone is doing lots of activity and creating value. So how can we say we've run out of money? Well, what it means is that Ghana is a country that attaches to a global system. And so everything that happens inside Ghana has to go through some sort of transformation before it can match to some sort of value in the global system. And there's a bunch of exchanges that happen at the borderline between Ghana and the global system. And every few years, because of the value of those exchanges, and because the Ghanaian system is not properly evolved and structured, there's an imbalance that gets created, and it's called a balance of payments crisis. So we're going through a balance of payments crisis right now. And what that basically means is that we don't have enough foreign currency to buy the stuff we need from outside that allows for our economy to operate. And if you what are those things? For example, petrol. Petrol and diesel are very important drivers for any economy, right? Naturally. But for Ghana, although we have crude oil under the ground, we still have, because we don't refine it, we still have to find dollars in order to be able to buy petrol to put into our cars and drive our economy. When it becomes difficult to find those dollars, it's said that you are in a balance of payments crisis. Okay, so that's the situation. Now, how did we get here? The reason why we're in a balance of payments crisis is because in order to finance the economy, in order to be able to buy those things we need to drive the economy, we have been borrowing dollars from outside and using those borrowed dollars to drive our economy, right? So what does that mean? So that means the government, for example, will go outside and borrow money, and it borrows it in many different ways. It can borrow it from other countries. It can borrow it from other sort of global institutions like the IMF, like the World Bank, like the Africa Development Bank and those type of supranational institutions, or it can borrow from the market in the form of Eurobonds or in the form of Ghanaian local currency debt or CD bonds. There's a range of ways in which the government borrows money, okay?
Including T-bills.
Including T-bills, right? So T-bills are a type of borrowing in cities which are short-term in nature, but we'll come to that. Okay, so the government goes and borrows. Now, when it borrows too much money, such that the amount of interest it has to pay back starts to become so much that it can't afford to operate its normal business, then it's reached a balance of payments crisis, right? It can't generate enough money to pay back on even the interest on its debts, okay? And the reason that's happened is because we borrowed too much dollars. We have $28 billion worth of debt. And that debt is generating a lot of interest. We're not even paying back the principal, we're just paying back the interest. And we can't afford it because of the way that the dollar has strengthened. So it's become more and more scarce. So it's become stronger and stronger. And the cedi has weakened as a result. And so as the activity that's happening in Ghana is being valued lower and lower, so we can't acquire enough dollars to pay back our debts. That's how we've ended up in the situation we're in. Now, the solution is to clear away those debts. It's kind of like if you go and borrow money because you have a project and you borrow the money, you run the project, and then you spend loads of money on the project, but the project doesn't quite give you enough money back. In the end, you can't pay back the debt. So you go back to the person who you borrowed the money from and you say to them, you know what, I borrowed all this money and I was supposed to pay you all this money back. It turns out that whilst I was managing to pay you back for a while, now the business is not as profitable as I thought. I cannot now pay you back, or I've spent too much money. I can't pay you back. So please, let's come up with another agreement to determine how much I can pay you back. So what happens when you get to that stage where there's a balance of payments crisis is that you end up having to cancel a lot of the debt because there's no other way to generate enough money to be able to service the debt. And that's where we are now.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think I want to come to you, Elikem. Another term I've heard a lot is the domestic debt exchange. I hear it all the time on the news. People are even like crying on the news and things.
Yeah.
Can you explain that for us as well?
So I'll just follow up from where Kweku left off.
Yeah.
So government has gotten to a point where it has borrowed so much and it says, look, I cannot pay you guys. And it's not sustainable. I cannot keep paying these huge interest rates on the debts that I have borrowed. So I'm going to restructure my debts with you. So I've come to the lenders, most of them being the banks. I think the banks own like collectively about 55% of local debts. And if you add the insurance companies and some of the finance houses, it comes to about 60 something. So these are majority of government lenders. They have come to them and they are saying that let me help me make my debt sustainable so that I can pay you, so that it doesn't break your balance sheets and all that, right? So they are saying that, okay, so for the amount that you owe me, this is how I want to structure it with you. This is how I want to be able to pay you. And I'm assuring you that if we structure it like this, I'll be able to pay you back. So they are saying that give me the old debt, give me my old debt and I'll exchange it for a new one. That is sustainable, right? So that's basically what the domestic debt exchange program is. So you're exchanging the old unsustainable debt with high interest rates for like new ones that government believes will be sustainable.
Yeah, just to add, the reason why the debt exchange program has become necessary is because we're going through this process with the IMF. The IMF is trying to help. It's the way in which we fix these balance of payments crises. And the way that the IMF does it is by saying, I will give you some money, very, very cheap, super cheap money, like 0.5% is how much interest we pay on IMF money. So super cheap money. Now that money is actually the profits of the big nations in the IMF who are earning loads of money. They all put that money into the fund. And that becomes available to the weaker nations when they get these balance of payments crises. So IMF comes along and it says, okay, we're going to give you some money, but in order to give you the money, you need to do these steps to achieve sustainability. So they did some analysis and they said, your debt is unsustainable because you're currently spending 105% of your GDP paying debt. So everything that Ghana produces every year, you're spending that plus an extra 5% just paying back your debt. So therefore, your debt to GDP is too high. You need to reduce your debt to GDP. So they come along and they say, how are you going to do that? So the Ghana government went along, they found some consultants and they said to the consultants, right, can you guys help us figure out how to get debt sustainability? How do we reduce our debt to GDP from 105 down to 55? And how do we reduce our debt service to GDP? So how much money we spend every week or every year compared to how much we produce? How do we reduce that amount of money down to 18%? So we're basically saying for every for every 1 cedi that the Ghanaian person produces, we're only going to spend 18 pesos on debt. That's the goal. So they went to these consultants and they said to the consultants, how do we do that? And the consultants came back and they said, right, you need to, first of all, along with the IMF, you need to reduce your debt exposure, first by changing the structure of the debt. So they came up with this debt exchange program as the plan for how to change the structure of the debt. And that, as Elikem has explained, involves exchanging the old debt and giving you a new instrument that has completely different terms. And the terms are that basically the government of Ghana used to pay 21% interest, right? So if you gave 100 cedis to government, every year you would get back 21 cedis before your principal, right? And now the government is saying that that is unsustainable, and it genuinely is unsustainable. And we'll explain why in a minute. But the government is saying that's unsustainable. So we want to reduce it all the way down to 9. So now for every 100 cedis the government borrows, they'll pay 9 cedis interest. And the reason it's unsustainable is this. The government's job is literally build roads, bridges, hospitals, and schools. A company that builds roads, bridges, hospitals, and schools does not generate 21% profit. It cannot, right? It generates like 5. So how can you expect your government, who builds roads, hospitals, and schools, to generate 21% interest every year? Because if it did that, then after 4 years, it would have had to double the money in order to be able to just pay you back, right? Yeah. So that's clearly unsustainable. The government, number one, if it was a business, would not be capable. But number two, it's really hard to generate 21% interest. Only very higher risk endeavors generate those type of returns. And so what the government is basically saying is, Charlie, it's no longer sustainable for you to expect us to pay you 21% interest. We still need your money though, right? Because we can't run the government without your money. So we'll still borrow from you, and the money that you've already lent will protect your principal, but we're going to reduce the amount of money that we pay you from 21 down to 9. And then we're telling you that we're not going to give you your money back. That 100 cedis you invested, you're not going to get it back for like now another additional 15 years, right? So that means that instead of getting the 100 cedis back in like 2 years' time, which is what you're expecting, now you're going to add another 15 on top. So you get it in 17 years, something like that. And that reduces the pressure on the government to find that money to pay the people it owes, which creates fiscal space for it to be able to do the things it wants to do, like building roads and schools and hospitals, right? So that's where we've got. In order for the government to go back to being a functioning government again, it has to cut back the debt, tell all you guys that it can't give you your promised repayments, and you're not going to get the money back for another 15 years. And that will allow the government to go back to being a functioning government.
Okay, I have a question. Okay, why is you think you know? No, my question is quite simple. As you said, our government is basically building and making roads and doing certain things that will make it unrealistic for them to pay. So if that's the situation, why did they agree? I'm asking as a layman, like, why did they agree for such a difficult like interest rate and then now come back and say, oh, sorry, it's unmanageable for me. Can I pay? I can't pay. Like, make it make sense for me. I'm sorry. Do you understand my question?
I think how I'll answer this is,
I think interest rates in Ghana have been really high over a period. So each government comes and follows in the tradition. Government borrows like at expensive rates.
Yeah.
So it's just a continuum. I think that's, and also inflation. I think sometimes inflation in Ghana can be really high. So usually interest rates are pegged against inflation. So if I bought something for 1 cedi today, next year I have to buy it at 120. It means that if I'm going to lend money to the government, I have to lend it higher than 20% so that inflation doesn't beat me. So I think first of all, we need to tackle the issue of inflation as a country first, before, you know, all these things can also happen, like bring down interest rates and stuff like that. So because if government comes to look for money and then inflation is high, and I know that if government gives me a lower rate, I cannot afford to buy the same thing that I could buy today next year. Why would I give money to the government?
Yeah.
So they need to increase the interest rates so that will make it attractive for investors like you and I to lend money to the government. So fundamentally, do you have anything to add?
It's interesting because that inflation rate which drives this supposed need for a big return is supposedly a reflection of the level of risk and uncertainty in the economy. And of course, it's quite circular because the uncertainty and risk is when you reach the point of being balance of payments unstable, right? So it's like the whole thing is based on a bunch of ideas. And the idea is that the African economy, the Black man's economy, is inefficient. And therefore, there's a lot of risk embedded in it. Therefore, if I'm going to lend money into the Black man's economy, then I have to add extra risk on top. That's that extra, risk premium for African economies. Now, the problem with that is it's the addition of the risk premium itself that ultimately means that the devaluation happens. If I have to pay an extra 10% because you priced it in, when I pay that 10%, it'll reflect in the price, right? Because there's an outflow from my pocket to you. And so the valuation will drop because I just paid you. So because there's 10% bedded in to the price, extra risk for African bonds, there is then this inflationary effect because there's a devaluation that happens because you're paying away too much value, right? So it's kind of annoying because I listened to Elikem and he's giving you the answer because we answer our job is to basically answer the question on the exam paper, right? But the exam paper is flawed, right? And the reason we're in this situation is because there's a bunch of old agreements about what is fair when we're dealing with Black environments and what is fair when we're dealing with post-colonial countries. And those agreements are unfair, but they're bedded into the way the system works. And that's why we end up always persistently back in this place where you're paying out all this value, restructuring, taking a real beating and a period of uncertainty that allows for outsiders to take advantage, right? The chaos allows opportunities for others to take advantage. This time around, the government has taken a set of steps kind of to say we want it to work out differently, right? And for it to work out differently, we have to restructure the whole system. And the first step is cutting the interest rates down from 21 to 9. Because when you do that, then you make sure that the money that was previously going to government no longer goes to government, but feeds into the economy instead. And in a way, the government is basically saying that the old system of sending all our money to government, more than 73% of money created in pension funds and insurance companies was going to the government. The government is saying no longer should that be the case because actually the rest of the economy is being starved of money. If you think young people need to create businesses, young people need to get investments, old people need to invest in their children, in the younger generation, but they're not doing it because they're giving it to the government to get 21%. Easy money, right?
The last 3 years one that was issued.
Right. 30%. But that money should be going to young people to do real stuff that creates real value, that creates jobs. Then the profit goes back to the person who made the investment rather than it going to government. And so the change that's happening is ultimately in order to affect that structural change. This time around is different if we follow through.
So are you suggesting then, because I've seen some people say it as well on social media and on the news and things, that this may actually end up being a good thing for us because we are restructuring our debts and everything. And like you said, we are kind of dealing with a system, global financial system that's kind of racist and has neo-colonial ties and all these types of things. So if we do go through with this plan to restructure our debts and everything, if say after people finally get their principal back in 15 years, would you suggest that this will leave Ghana in a better place?
I think that in order for it to leave Ghana in a better place, a number of other things need to happen, right? So if you just change the price of the bonds, but then you don't restructure the economy, so you don't intentionally find ways to create massive productive extra capacity in the economy. If you don't do that, then you will simply go back in 6 years' time when the next government is running into its second cycle. You'll simply go back again to IMF to borrow more money, right? But if you actually change it so that you find ways to strengthen the cedi structurally by making sure that you don't get outflows of value creation in Ghana going out. So you have to stop people who come here to make profit. You have to stop them from taking that profit away, because that profit is actually value inside Ghana. So every time you take it away, we get a devaluation. So first of all, you have to stop them doing that. And that stopping them shores up the cedi, because it means that you don't have to find dollars to help people take their profits away. So the first thing is we have to change the conceptualization of what this place is. This place is not somewhere where white people can come and get their oil, get their gold, get their lithium and go. If we continue to accept that that's what this is, then you'll be back here again. The government will be begging you to restructure again, canceling debt, all those things. But if instead you say, okay, so there's loads of young people who are really bright, like you guys, look at this, right? Who are creating real value. We got to keep that value inside Ghana. And then we have to create stuff that you guys, when you create value and get paid, can spend money on. So you spend money on things that's created in Ghana. So instead of sending your money out to buy Nido, Milo, Coca-Cola, you're buying stuff that's made in Ghana, then you're basically giving your money to the other guys who are also in Ghana. They then get some profits, and then they spend it on the advertisers who then give you guys money. So you create a circular economy. If there's leakage in the economy, then you always get back to this balance of payments crisis, because what? You're sending all of your profits out. And the restructuring is basically saying, number one, we're stopping how much of money goes out. But number two, we're trying to make sure that the money that gets inside is reinvested in productive capacity inside, so that young people are not sitting at home anymore, but they're actually, doing stuff, creating ideas, implementing the ideas, valuing the ideas, collecting money for those ideas, and then creating value in the economy. Right?
So it's a structural.
It's a fundamental structural change. It's like changing the Ghanaian dream. No longer is it, let me go to London and da-da-da-da-da. No, it's like, if you create value in Ghana, then the value multiplier effect is way better. So stay here and do it.
So it sounds like we are almost trying to change the whole culture, basically, of Ghana, essentially, because, like you said, there's a Ghanaian dream, which is to say, work outside and come here for holidays. Because, you come and spend your foreign currency here, and that's where you're living life.
That's exactly.
So, has there been similar, has there been similar instances of this in other countries like ours, who are trying to detach ourselves from that international dependence type of thing?
Or has this situation happened in Ghana before and it didn't work, and I'll come to rebrand and say, hey, this time we're going to do the right thing? Because these are concerns.
There's an average amount of time government.
I think it's 3.9 years.
Yeah, it's actually 7 years.
Every 7 years.
Yeah, so we've been 17 times to that.
IMF,
So we've had this whole we're coming to restructure thing happen multiple times before.
Yeah, so back in I think it was 2002. It was the EPIC initiative, where they cancelled our debts,
all our debts.
And we went down to 10% debt to GDP. It was happy days. And then what happened? We found oil. As soon as we found oil, we started to get more debt, because we basically, as soon as we found oil, it meant that we had room to acquire more debt, because we could service that debt. So the more oil we found, the more debt we took on. We took on as much debt as oil. So as soon as we found something valuable, then we gave it away in debt. because that's the way our economy is structured. In the 1970s, there was a paper written by a guy called Johann Galton, and it's called the theory of structural imperialism. Mm-hmm. And he explains that basically the world is set up as a bunch of basically a core and a periphery. So the core is basically the developed nations, London, Paris, New York, Hong Kong. That's where all the economic activity happens. It's where all the value is accrued, where all the wealth actually sits. So in the center of the center is the most power and the most wealth. Then outside of the center, there's the periphery. So countries like Ghana are the periphery. We serve the center by producing value that gets accrued in the center. And he explained that basically within the periphery, there's a center. So there's a center of the periphery. And the center of the periphery is connected to the center of the center. And the role of that center is to send value from the periphery to the center. That's the way that the Ghanaian economy was designed before the British left. And we have never changed it. Most African countries have not changed their structures ever since. That's why we end up basically in this structural situation. Now, and the result of it is like, we've got like some crazy agreements, right? Like, so for every dollar of gold we dig up, we keep like 10 cents of the value. For every dollar of oil that we drill, we keep 18 cents, right? We should be, if you go to Norway, look at Norway's sovereign wealth fund, Norway keeps like 75%, right? So when we talk about the change that needs to happen in Ghana, where we change the structure and we start to perceive our own value properly, then you have to basically say, okay, we won't survive if we continue to sell our oil for 20 cents in the dollar. We have to actually get to 75. So there's a whole bunch of things that need to change if we're actually going to successfully mature out of this process. But this has happened many, many times everywhere else before. In the Latin America, and in a way, this is like a process of maturation. It's like growing pains. It's like, you know, a teenager is learning to manage their own money. They always run into the overdraft. They're always calling daddy going, I'm really sorry, I run out of money. Can you send me some more? Because they don't know how to manage their money, right? And it's actually not until you get to like 35, 40 years old, we've actually learned to manage and accrue value properly, right? Let's say Ghana is like a 25-year-old in the scheme of development, right? There are some countries like in the Latin Americas who went through this process in the 1970s, right? And it's driven by when the developed core decided to send money to you. For us, they decided to start sending money to us in like 2015, 2016, 2017. And there was a massive big hose of money that got sent to Africa, right? And that money was hunting for yield. It was at the end of the economic cycle where all the other money had been deployed and they were looking for extra profits. At the end of the cycle, they send it to Africa and they charge extra premium for it. And that's what happened. So like there were conferences, like in 2019, I went to a conference in South Africa where all the big funds were there. You know, the hunt for yield in Africa, send your money to Africa. That money, when it got pulled, created this problem. They have to avoid the external money. That's like the structural change that needs to happen. And if we can avoid that external money, we can start investing in ourselves and investing in other African countries, then we can keep the value accrual inside when we have a chance. The other times in which this has happened, Latin American debt crisis, the Asian debt crisis. So Latin America was in the 1970s. The Asian debt crisis was in the 1990s. The Russian debt crisis was in 1997. Jamaica, 2010 and 2013. They've all had these debt crises where hot money comes and then it leaves and it leaves a hole, right? And that's what's happened here. So when that happens, the country has to go through a growing up process. Oh, excuse me to say this, but it's like a young person who gets who doesn't know how to defend themselves and gets sort of abused, right, sexually by an outsider. When that happens, they learn, oh, There are steps I need to take to defend myself, to recognize that I'm about to be abused. And it's unfortunate, but in the world we live in, people get abused. The developing nations have been at the center of that abuse for time. So when it happens, and you have to learn, oh, I need to put some things in place to make sure that this doesn't happen anymore. First, I have to shout and say, hey, you're doing this to me. This is not right. The second step is, okay, now that I've told you you're doing this, what are you going to put in place to make sure that you don't do it to me anymore?
Right.
What am I going to put in place to defend myself?
Right.
So now our response is now, okay, so everyone else who's gone through this process, what did they do? Okay, what are we going to do? So we followed the Jamaica model to try and restructure our debt, and that's where we are today.
Okay. Yeah, so I think we're about to go on a break.
Yeah.
I'll be back. We'll continue the conversation. There's a lot more questions we have. There's a lot more we want to learn.
Yeah.
From these two years.
For example, I mean, we've spoken about everything, but I want us to come back down to understand, okay, so what is going to happen to the average Ghanaian? How does this affect the economy? So when we come back from the break, I would like us to have that conversation. And to our viewers, we'll be on break for 5 minutes. There's a Q&A place. You can just ask your questions. And when we come back from the break, we'll ask our guest as well. So thank you so much for joining, and see you after 5 minutes. Don't go anywhere. Thank you.
Estate planning decisions on what someone has told them.
It's important that you plan for your retirement so that you don't bank your support on your children, your family, or relations, or friends.
Do you know that if you take care of your mom or any other relative aged 60 and above, you're entitled to a tax relief of 1,000 cedis?
As we speak, about 59% of all pensioners on the slave payroll are earning 1,000 cedis or less. About 96% of them are earning 2,000 cedis or less.
This is where budgeting also comes in, because you have your revenues and you have your expenses. You need to be able to match your revenues to your expenses to make room to be able to invest to meet your financial goals.
We have a webinar series coming up called the Financial Literacy Series, and this will run from December 2022 up until November of 2023. The first few topics that will be covered between December and March will range from budgeting to understanding tax benefits, investments, estate planning and insurance, and retirement planning.
Our Partnerz webinars came in at a time when I was a financial newbie, started to educate me on the need for financial planning, shaped my attitude towards spending.
I clearly know what I want, how and when I want it. I'm more than excited to have Partnerz in my journey to financial freedom.
So join me and other qualified professionals and experts in the field in the Financial Literacy Series and get to know all there is to know about retirement. My name is Joseph Oku, and I'm the Chief Actuarial Secretary.
Hi, my name is Dillis and I work with Partnerz. Here at Partnerz, we help people acquire knowledge to better their financial life. And we do this through the use of our webinars.
One of the major problems when it comes to investing is people investing without a plan. A lot of people base their investment decisions on what someone has told them.
It's important that you plan for your retirement so that you don't bank your support on your children, your family, or relations, or friends.
Do you know that if you take care of your mom or any other relative aged 60 and above, you're entitled to a tax relief of 1,000 cedis?
As we speak, about 59% of all pensioners on the slave payroll are earning 1,000 cedis or less. About 96% of them are earning 2,000 cedis or less.
This is where budgeting also comes in, because you have your revenues and you have your expenses. You need to be able to match your revenues to your expenses to make room to be able to invest to meet your financial goals.
We have a webinar series coming up called the Financial Literacy Series, and this will run from December 2022 up until November of 2023. The first few topics that will be covered between December and March will range from budgeting to understanding tax benefits, investments, estate planning and insurance, and retirement planning.
All right, welcome back to our conversation. We are here to continue our discussion, and now we want to talk about how it's affecting the everyday Ghanaian. We've heard a lot about how it's happening in other countries, you know, the bare bones of what's going on. Now we understand what's happening, but how is it affecting my pockets? When I
Right.
go to the hospital or to the markets, how am I going to feel this every day in my everyday life? So I think my first question for you guys is, I'll start with you, Elikem, is what does this mean for our investments and for pension funds? So I've seen a lot of older people, especially, very upset about this thing. People who are angry.
Yes,
like,
and crying
angry
on
crying,
radio.
you know, about their pensions and then their investments. So what does this mean for them?
Okay, so fundamentally, loss of income.
Yeah.
So you go and buy a bond or you put your money in like a bond or something, you're expecting to earn 21, 25% every month, every year, and semi-annually. And our government says, I'm going to reduce all that to 5% this year and 9% consecutively from next year. So all of a sudden, there's loss of income. Secondly, for us in the financial industry, there's a bit of murkiness because we usually trade these instruments to support our liquidity and all that. So that is going to be hindered a bit. Kweku, if you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Basically, the government was paying people 21%.
Right.
So people could give their money to the government. It didn't matter who you were. If you were a pensioner, and let's say you had 150,000 cedis saved over the course of your working life, then you got to the end of your pension, you realized you could just buy government bonds, and that 100,000 cedis would give you 20,000 cedis every year if you just gave it to the government. So lots of people gave their money to the government. So now all those people who were expecting to receive that money suddenly are not going to receive that money. And then naturally, you plan your life around that money. You're paying school fees, you're planning hospital bills, all your safety, your electricity bills, everything. You structure your Ready? Okay.
Yeah, we're back on it.
Yeah, so you plan your life based on all these expected flows. So when the government suddenly says we're not going to give you that anymore, suddenly it becomes a problem. So now, luckily, at first the government said they weren't going to give any interest at all for 2023. But now they've agreed that they're going to give people 5% this year, and then 10% from next year going forward. Sorry, 9% from next year going forward, which basically means that we're now reaching the stage where people are accepting that the environment has changed, that they're no longer going to get 20% from the government. So as long as there's 5% that they're being paid this year, then they'll make ends meet and then try again for, get the 10% next year. So there is a real effect. There's real income that is now going missing. Additionally, there's an effect that we've all already felt, which is the devaluation in the cedi and the price changes that we've seen in everything. Everything is doubled in price. Yeah. So we've already felt the impact. This debt restructuring, the instruments have already priced in the pain or the loss that people are so scared of. They've already priced in that loss. It's counterintuitive, right? But they've already taken the loss. The government is simply saying, we're going to give you another instrument instead of the one that you had. The new instrument will derive its value based off the old instrument. It's just that the new instrument will now be able to reflect any new appreciation in value in the Ghanaian economy, right? So all they're doing is they're saying, this old instrument, it's incurred a ton of losses. That loss is reflected in the price of the instrument. We're now going to exchange it for another instrument that will reflect the price of the old instrument, but gives you the opportunity for the upside when the economy re-rates. That's where we are.
Okay. So let's just take some of the questions from our viewers. I think this one, you've already answered it, but I'll just ask so that the person gets understanding. And one person said, thank you for the explanation of the domestic debt exchange from an interest of 21% to 9%. But my question is, who will bear the risk, the remaining 21% difference? Is it the government, 12%, sorry, is it the government or the investors? So they want to know what happens to the remaining amount.
It's the investors. So it's the investors who are taking the hit. And the way that the government is doing it is, first of all, by telling you, instead of giving you 21 CDs for every 100 every year, it's going to give you 9. That's the first thing. The second thing, and so it's basically saying, I'm giving you less than half of the money I was giving you every month, right? Yeah. So you're getting less interest. Not only that, but I'm not going to give you your 100 CDs principal back, right?
15 years.
For now, instead of giving it to you back in like 2027 or next year or 5 years from now, which is what really it was going to be, instead, now you have to wait an additional 15 years, right?
That's additional to the...
Starting from 2027.
Oh, okay.
Right. Okay. So starting from 2027, going out, it'll pay, those bonds will now give you a little bit of your premium back each year, principal, sorry, back each year. But basically, by holding your money for longer and giving you less interest, that it's the investor who is taking the hit.
Okay, another question that is related. I think you've already answered it as well, but I just want them to see their questions answered step by step. What money are we not getting back for now? Is it the principal or the interest on the principal for the next 15 years, as Kweku stated, with regards to the 100 Cs? I think you literally just answered it, but just reiterate.
So it's both, right? So you're not getting your coupons, or you're getting half your coupons, or less than half, and your principal is going to be held for longer, your original money. So both.
Okay. And then I have another question here. What advice would you give a young person who has invested in treasury bills through investment banks? Should the individual go and withdraw his or her money, or wait till the 15 years and take the money?
Elikem, can you answer?
T-bills are not part of the exchange.
For now.
What? I don't think they will ever be part of the exchange.
So they can just
relax.
You can just keep it though. T-bills
if you have any problems, don't come in from you.
I mean, the finance minister has said it several times that T-bills are exempt from the exchange. So, I mean, based on his word.
Yeah, if you're trying to make a decision, right? At the moment you've got your money in T-bills. So T-bills are 90 days, 180 days, 364-day instruments. You're getting like 30% returns, right? Yeah. You will get them for some time. What's likely to happen is that market dynamics will mean that you won't get those forever. Because it's the only place you can lend to government, everyone will try and lend to government in that place. That means there'll be more people wanting to lend to government. That means there'll be more bid to cover, right? There's more people offering money than the government actually needs. That means the government can reduce the price it's willing to pay you, right? So it'll go from 30 down to 20, and eventually down to where the long-term debt is, around 12 or 11%.
So you think that's likely to happen?
That's in an efficient market, that's what should happen.
So then that is related to this question. So I'm asking you, Elikem. It says T-bill rates are currently well above 30%, and it appears to be unsustainable considering the current economic position. Do you anticipate that they will be added to the DDEP? That's what the person is asking, basically.
No, so we are saying that they will not be added to DDEP.
Yeah.
But regarding the sustainability of interest rates, like Kweku just said, when there are lots of demand for the government's T-bills because of the drop in number of instruments that you could put your money in, it will bring down the interest rates, because even like T-bills they are auctioned. So government gives it to the lowest interest rate, the lowest cost first. So right now, if there's so many people bidding for the same instrument, it will just drop down. And that is what will happen eventually in an efficient market, of which Ghana we are trying to become. So even it should drop below 9%.
It should.
So that's what an efficient market looks like. The interest in an efficient markets are usually below 12.
So what Elikem is explaining is that short-term debt should be cheaper. It's lower risk, so it's cheaper than long-term debt. That means T-bills, since the government is now saying you've all agreed long-term debt is 9%, that means T-bills should be less than 9%.
Yeah.
So in the long term, in an efficient market, it should reach below 9.
Wow. Okay. And there's another one here. They say everyone mostly saves towards a project or purpose or plan. So if now I have to wait for a longer time to receive my profits or benefits, then this new system will not favor us. How then do I achieve my plans and project goals within the timelines I planned for?
Basically, me, I've done my plan. I've said that if I put my money here, I'll get this percentage. Then I'll use that percentage to start building my small farm. Now the government has come to tell me that my 21%, I should forget about it. So now what am I going to do,
Elikem? Change your plans to conform with what's happening now.
So that's like the hard
truth. So we all need to start changing our plans.
So it's basically we all have to sacrifice to achieve this ideal vision of Ghana becoming a more sustainable economy. And
yes,
that's exactly it. That's exactly it, right? Yeah. So if you set off, let's say you set off to restructure an economy, the first effect of that restructuring is a cost. Whenever you try and change something, you have to pay for the change first. And politicians don't like actually changing things because it means that they don't win elections. So it's very hard for a system to actually affect change through political choice. So what actually ends up happening is if you don't make the right changes, the system ends up skewing to one side so far that it forces you to change. So what does that change actually mean? So if you're a young person today and you were smart enough to lend your money to government for 21%, right? It was a no-brainer trade. Like it was a no-brainer. It was the right thing. You weren't aware of what was coming, so you didn't take your money out fast enough. That's the pain of the situation. Now your money is kind of locked, right? If you keep the old instruments, you won't be able to So this is actually a really important question, which is if you're an individual bondholder and you're currently still receiving government debt, or you've not been exempted yet and you don't know what to do, the question is, what should you do? If it turns out that the government allows you not to exchange as an individual bondholder, then the best thing to do is to basically to keep the old bonds, take the coupons that the bond pays, use those coupons to buy the new bonds, right? So you're getting new exposure and you're receiving the coupons from the new bonds and you're still getting the old bonds. So you actually, individual bondholders who don't get exempted get a chance to get a really nice return.
So that allows them to stick to their plans.
Right. That allows them to stick to their plans. So if the government is kind and allows individual bondholders to get through this without being exempted because they're only 6%, then actually the government has really done a big thumbs up to the individual bondholders. It's allowing you to keep the old bonds, to take those coupons, to buy the new bonds. And actually those individual bondholders then become the prop for the new bonds, actually. But everyone else, let's say you've given your money to a fund and they've invested in some structures for you. All that's going to happen is that the bank is going to basically restructure. So they replace the old bonds with the new bonds, and they'll start paying you a lesser coupon. But there is one thing that needs to be said, which is that when you switch to the new bonds, you have the exposure to the re-rating of the economy. So if you're a young person, really you should be spending your money on your startup, on your business, on your clothes, on your house, on your transport. You shouldn't really, I mean, in real terms, a young person shouldn't be lending their money to the government. In a fair world where the government doesn't pay 21%, a young person is not going to lend their money to the government. So they should actually be investing that money in building capacity now, right? And actually the nice thing about this debt restructuring is that the money that now becomes available that is not going to the government anymore should now be invested in young people building new businesses, trying to start up to build new things, right? That's what should happen now, because that will actually end up creating more value than the 21% that the government was paying out.
This actually even feeds into the efficient system, because capital is given to the most efficient source. So then we have an efficient system. These businesses become the like the efficient receivers of the funds. So then if they are the ones who are going to turn around the capital that they receive faster, then why give it to the government?
Okay.
I think you can take a few more questions and then go back to the
session. Main, yeah. So there's another one here that says, hello, Kweku and Elikem. Is there not any other way to sort out our debt repayments rather than this debt restructuring? And look at the Auditor General's reports over the years. I think governments can manage our funds properly. This can help with the reduction of debts and repayments. Do you think there's a possibility? Basically, can government do better?
Like
instead of putting us in this tight spot.
I mean, government can always do better. I mean, they're, like you said, it's the way the system has been structured. There are too many loopholes. And then in the long run, we end up coming to this situation.
So this was avoidable.
That's how we feel. I think that's how a lot of people feel.
I know a lot of people feel like that. I think that people need to really, really, really think deeply about what is happening, right? If you all expected the government to be able to pay you 21% interest, then none of you were thinking deeply enough. That's the issue, right? If everybody thought the government, whose job is to build hospitals, schools, and roads, was able to pay 21%, and cathedrals, yes. If you all thought the government could pay 21 and still build cathedrals, then you were all part of the problem, right? So we all have to take our own responsibility and say, you know what, we're all part of the problem. And in order for us to change, we can't just sit here and say it was the government that did it. Because guess what? It doesn't matter which government, right? Every single government that Ghana has had, apart from Kwame Nkrumah, every single one has gone to IMF.
Imagine if government came onto the market and said, I'm raising money for 21%, and none of us gave them because we believed that it wasn't going to be it wasn't going to be used properly.
Right.
Yeah.
They would have had to raise through I go through this process. Right? Yeah.
So in the end,
we are all part of the problem.
We're all part of the problem. So the real factor is that we now need to dig deep. People like Elikem, all the bankers need to do their jobs, right? They need to find ways for people to earn 21% without giving it to the government, right? So Elikem needs to go and create some instruments. Of course it's feasible. Finance is an endeavor of the imagination, right? It's a way to codify what you want the society to be, right? So if you say this is where we want to go, then you have to sit down and think, okay, how do we manage our financial and funding flows to achieve that long-term outcome, right? What institutions and processes do we need to build? The first one that we need to build now is, since the government can no longer collect money and pay 21%, we need to find a way for Elikem to raise that money to then invest in the corporates who will do the work, building the roads and the bridges and things that will generate the profits that he will then pay back to the investors. Elikem needs to build the instruments that will then finance the SMEs, the small and medium-term enterprises, and so medium-sized enterprises who need money. He needs to find those instruments. Because he can't earn 21% from the government anymore, there's now an incentive for him to actually go and do that work. Charlie, they're responsible. That's right. Yes, that's right.
So let's take one more question from the audience and then we'll get back to the main. Yeah.
Okay, so kind of a little bit off direction, but still I think it's a valid question, my same question. I have this question myself. So if I was asking, what is my best bet as a risk-averse person who wants to retire early? So right now, what am I supposed to do if in an economy that seems very shaky? I don't know. Right now, people are saying the T-bills, the percentage is going to go down. So now what am I supposed to do?
Because I feel like at first the T-bills and the bonds were advertised as a smart way to invest your money so you can retire early, as you were saying. So
I even want to add it to another person's someone asked about something concerning like land, that doesn't make sense to sort of put your money into things like land before we even start out saying gold. Like, what are the safe ways by which we can protect our money now that the economy seems very fluid and volatile? Like, we don't even know what to do.
I mean, there are quite a number of questions.
Ask yourself before you put your money somewhere.
Mm.
How long? What kind of risk you are willing to afford yourself, or you are willing to take?
Mm.
How much interest you want? Like what you use the money for, the returns, all those questions you need to ask yourself before you decide which instrument to put in.
Mm.
If you want to invest your money for a short period, a week, 2 weeks, 3 months, T-bills are currently the best form of instrument to put your money in, because they are short terms and stuff. But if you want to go into land, then you're doing long term. If you want to buy land and then store for a while, then you're not thinking of the next year or probably the next 2 years. You're holding out for a while. So these are some of the questions that you can ask yourself before you go into anything. And I think that a number of Ghanaians usually don't like reading before they put their money into some instrument.
Yeah.
Or probably most of what we did was hearsay.
Yeah.
Oh, this fund is doing well, take your money there. We don't really even know where the fund is putting your money into. All you know is you're giving your money to some bank or something, but you don't know what the bank is using the money for. We need to educate ourselves about where we are sending our money to. I'll give you this typical example. I have clients in the US, I have clients in the UK, and I have clients in Ghana. In Ghana, I'll tell you, I just want to buy FD. Give me the rates, 6 months or something. But before the person living in the US or the UK will give you their money, to ask you tons of questions, sometimes days. And you have to convince them before the money comes. So I feel that based on this experience, I've just come to realize a lot of us don't usually, we are not curious about where our money is going or what our money is going to be used for. So I think we just need to build curiosity in ourselves and then know.
So, for example, the whole land thing, gold, there are options, but
yeah.
you need to weigh the pros and cons, understand how the market works. How long is my money going to be logged? What kind of rate am I going to get? Is it possible for my money to actually fall?
Yes.
And stuff like that.
Yes.
Okay. I hope that answers your
even
question.
before this, sometimes I feel that this what's happening now is a blessing in disguise in some ways, because before this, nobody knew that if you buy bonds, the value of a bond will go down.
Yeah.
But that possibility has always been there. We have known about that. Now people know that if you give your money to government, the value of the bonds fall, then you're reducing your principal. Even your principal can go down by margins.
This is what I mean by Ghana's like a 25-year-old, right?
Yeah.
We're still learning.
Yeah.
We're still learning how this stuff works.
Stuff. But yeah, that was a really good question, because it's answered one of the questions we had prepared for you. So now I want to ask you guys, what can people do to protect their existing savings and investments? Like what should I, if I've bought some bonds, because there's people who have bonds like quite a few different institutions, and now they're losing their minds. What can someone like that do to protect their investments at this point?
Well, first of all, you have to understand that the losses have been incurred, right? And the instrument you're holding already reflects the loss that you.
So there's no way to go back and say, please, it's okay, just give me
my money
back, my principal, then the interest, and then
yeah. So
you can't do that.
So no, because I mean, ultimately, even if the government says, okay, fine, you can. We'll let some individuals hold your bonds. It's cool because then they can hold those bonds, but even they won't be able to trade out. They have to hold until those particular bonds expire. It's I think the thing for people to remember is that there is a secondary market. There's a place where you can go, where you can sell your bonds and pick up cash. The thing is that you can't pick up more cash than the value that's available to you based on the amount of time left before the bond matures. This is the effect of the government's directive that everyone has to mark to market, right? The bonds have to reflect the market price. It means that when you go to sell your bond, the further you are away from the maturity, the less principal you will pick up, which obviously makes sense, right? That's how the market should work.
Yeah.
But because of the change of terms and the fact that these new bonds are coming, the old bonds will now start to reflect the value of the new bonds as well, so that you won't be able to trade out of them. So if you currently have old bonds, I think there's two things you can do. You can gamble that the government will allow you to get your money back by exempting you, right? If you miss the deadline, which I think is on Tuesday, you gamble that the government will exempt you. If you don't accept it and the government doesn't exempt you because it says, Charlie, we don't have any money left, which is highly likely, right? The government has said we don't have any dollars left. 4 weeks from now, we'll run out of dollars. So we don't have any money to pay our debts. So if you gamble and the government says we can't pay you, then you now have an instrument that is worth nothing, right? If you exchange, then you get an instrument that is, won't pay your principal for 15 years. So it's a lower valued instrument, but you can trade off the instrument in the secondary market and get some of your money. Then you can reinvest that money in other things to get your money back. But I do think that people need to accept that there is a loss. There's a big loss here, and you have to accept your loss. And that's what the government is trying to say. Like, unfortunately, the deal that we had was wrong because we promised to pay you too much. We can't pay you, so we pay you less. So you have to kind of take your loss. And ultimately, this is the reality of investing in financial instruments. Even the US government debt, which is the ultimate risk-free rate, was restructured. They went through a debt default in 2011. So even the US, the biggest, most secure financial asset in the world, the government debt of the US, defaulted. So if that isn't truly risk-free rates, how far Ghana?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, so then I have a question. So does that mean that we are falling into a recession? Are we falling into a recession?
Good question.
Because
It
it's like everything is becoming down, everybody is slow, money is not in the system, we are kind of poor. Like, is there a recession?
In school, they teach you that there are a number
The
of things
teachers.
that will happen before a recession.
Before you
Yeah.
declare a
Yeah,
recession.
recession. So
Yeah.
you need to see
Technical declaration.
what two successive economic troughs or
Two
something.
successive quarters of negative growth.
With the
And
negative
it's
growth, it
supposed
feels
to
like
be-
for a long time.
Yeah,
It feels
but-
negative.
But we don't have negative growth.
Yeah, it doesn't
like
so
2.5%.
I think our GDP came in at 3.4%
Yeah.
in
Question,
Q4.
are we the ones who calculates the GDP or there's an
Yeah, we
Independent-
calculate. So we have an Office of National Statistics.
okay.
and
Ghana
that-
National Statistics.
yes.
So are we how confident?
Can they calculate it well?
So they-
Negative.
I'm sure they are.
It's like an independent instrument that would calculate the GDP for us.
Yeah.
But since we are the ones doing it ourselves.
Yeah. So I mean, there are, as with all things, there are rules and processes, and although we criticize our government a lot, we criticize ourselves a lot.
Yeah.
We're actually way more skilled and talented than we allow ourselves.
I actually do believe that, yeah, we have people here who are talented, they qualified as well to, to be in these sectors. But sometimes it feels like, especially like the inflation rates, I'm seeing that Ghana's inflation is, let's say, 40%, but it's not 40% in my pockets.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm like,
right.
are these figures being massaged?
Yeah,
Right.
just
It's a great question.
head above water.
It's a great question. To some extent, they are. And statistics professionals will clearly show you how it's possible for some results to come within a range, and we're naturally going to push towards the more sustainable edge of the range. That's to be expected. It's the same everywhere. Governments everywhere will manipulate the numbers in their favor. It's by the definition of the science. But it's true, and it's absolutely true, right? Like, the things that you normally spend your money on have all doubled. Genuinely doubled. Cocoa, KK, petrol, everything doubled. So how, if it's doubled, are you telling me that it's only gone up by half?
Exactly.
Right? Like, that doesn't seem right. So it seems like there's some elements of the inflation basket. There's a basket of goods that they measure, And the change in price of those goods is what they use to determine inflation. And somehow that basket of goods seems to be reflecting not quite 150%, which is what we're really feeling, right? But I think in the end, governments have a role to control panic. If they were showing inflation numbers of 100, 110, 150, then the rate of inflation would feed on it and would go even faster.
Sure. And T-bills would be
paying like 90%. 90%.
So there's
and the whole system would have collapsed.
That we are in a recession, but according to the active
facts and figures.
Facts and figures.
So recession, the idea of recession is prices can change. Right? So that's what we're suffering. Prices are changing fast. But that doesn't mean we're not growing at the same speed as prices are changing, or faster or slower. There's an adjusted price, adjusted growth level based on growth minus the price change. So I know there's a feeling that, we're not growing, but the structure of Ghana's economy is very important. The way Ghana's economy is structured is that there's like some capitalist stuff at the top, then everyone else lives in a sort of pseudo-socialist system where we all do is we engage in the transfer of stuff, right? We're all selling mangoes, and then I'm the one who takes it from the farm and brings it to the market. I'm the one who takes it from the farm and takes it to the street corner. I'm the one who buys it from the street corner and turns it into some juice. Everyone is in that cycle, and we only take enough for ourselves. So it's a bit of a socialist system. And as a result, although we're suffering, we're surviving really well, right? We haven't run out of petrol. It's not like Sri Lanka. We haven't run out of petrol. It's expensive, but actually you can still get the stuff you want. As long as you can find the money to get it. So that means that if in the end, everyone's salary gets rebased, imagine if we found enough money to rebase everyone's salary, then suddenly there wouldn't be a problem anymore because you can now afford all the stuff. There'd be no crisis of economic activity, right? And that could happen, that it doesn't take a lot of liquidity. The average income for Africans is determined, is measured psychologically around $2. As long as you're earning $2 a day, then Ghanaians feel happy. On average. On average, right? It's crazy. I mean, that's changing because guess what? There are more and more Ghanaians who are now living in cities, who are now connected globally, who now want to be able to fly to Lagos, fly to Joburg, fly to Nairobi, fly to London, right? You want to be able to live the same life as everyone else anywhere else that you can see on your Twitter, on your Instagram, on your Facebook. That means that you need to be able to earn the same amount of money as someone sitting in London. Because guess what? Eggs cost the same in Ghana as they cost in London, right? So now the system, we need to find a way to make sure that the jobs because listen, the jobs that you guys are doing, recording this podcast, all the equipment that's here, it's exactly the same as if I was sitting in London. You needed to raise just as much money to buy this stuff. As they do. So you need to earn just as much money as the other guy who's buying this stuff.
Even more because, bringing it here is another cost.
Right, exactly. There's extra cost, right? So that's why this restructuring is so important. And we all need to engage in finding a way to actually fix, because the way it's working, it doesn't work. It doesn't work,
So I want us to go on a break again, but before that, I want to ask one more question. Elikem, I'm asking you. My question is, how do we understand the calculations involved? And Joel also asks that if the economy miraculously performs better sooner than we expect, is there a chance that we can get our 21% and then, or basically something better than 9%? So I think his question is almost like related with mine. Like if you understand the calculations involved, then you'll be able to know whether it can be better than 9% in the future or not.
So if, I don't know how to explain this. So there are two categories. So based on what we have from government now, individuals, we don't know what is still inconclusive. They are still negotiating with the government. We don't know what they are going to come out with. But currently what we have here is for the banks and insurance companies. Now, if I have a bond that is maturing this year in 2023, say I have 100,000 principal in 2023, they're going to pay me 5% this year. So I'll earn, if what is 100,000, so I earn 5,000 CDs this year. So I earn 2,500 CDs every 6 months. So in July, if the bonds, Tuesday is the deadline. So let's assume that's the issue date for the new bonds. I have a principal of 100,000 CDs from the old bond maturing in 2023. I've sent it for exchange. Now they're giving me 5%. So they'll pay me 6 months from January, which is what, July. They'll pay me 2,500 CDs. Note that at the end of every year, I'm supposed to earn 5,000 because of the 5% nature.
Okay.
So in July, I earn 2,500 CDs, which is half of the 5,000. And then in January next year, I'll earn the second 2,500, right?
Okay.
Then for the next year, the next cycle, I'm going to earn 9%. So that 5,000 now becomes 9,000. So I earned 4,500 in July of 2024. And then in January of 2025, I earned another 4,500. So if you put the two together, that's 9,000.
Right.
So that's 9% in 100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the principal payments start paying it back to you from 2027. So I get 8%? I think it's 8%. 8% in 2027. So I get 8% of my 100,000 in 2027, which is 8,000 plus the coupon, which is 9%. So I get 4,500 in 2027, which is the interest plus the 8% of the principal payment the government is paying. So I get a total of 12,500 in January in 2027. Yeah, I'm sure there will be templates that after all this I'm sure different investment banks and everybody will develop templates. We've developed ours, but because we don't know what's going on yet, so there'll be template. You can just feed in your figures and then later on. Yeah, I'm sure once everything we can share something with Partnerz, and then everybody can see what we'll be earning each year. Partnerz will have something for their customers. So
everyone has to go and learn some Excel skills.
Yeah,
100%.
Learn what net present value is and figure out how to break down the streams. Everyone is again in accelerated learning in bond pricing. But the next step is you need to learn how to price bonds for corporates and how to invest in the equity stack as well. So moving away from government paper, part of the development is you now need to learn how to invest in private sector organizations and using the bank's guidance.
I think if you think about this in the grander scheme of things, it's not really bad like that. Employers cash will end up being given to the most efficient sectors.
Exactly.
It will boost the equity market, which has been slow.
Exactly.
It will boost other things like private equity.
There's a name for this, right? It's called crowding out, right? If there's one entity in a market that's hoovering,
chopping everything,
funding, it crowds out the others from being able to get any funding because the government was paying 21% unfairly and impossibly, as we found out.
Under the guise of the spree.
And so now that crowding out will end, and it'll be really, I think it'll be like the Ghanaian economy has been running with a massive backpack, right? And suddenly you take off the backpack because the money is flowing to the private sector and all the people trying to do stuff instead of the government making all the decisions. There's some potential silver linings here.
Okay. So at least we have Partnerz and then the series to help us through the layman's like Afi and Zuu. At least series like this will help us really understand what's happening in the financial environment of our country.
After this, you're no more layman.
Yeah, Charlie, right now after this, I can open my own consultancy.
When I go out, the way I'll be talking.
different vibes, giving them the facts and figures.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we're going on a short break. We'll be back in 5 minutes and then we'll tackle all the other questions and wrap up. Thank you so much.
Man's discipline. I am more than excited to have Partnerz in my journey to financial freedom.
So join me and other qualified professionals and experts in the field in the financial literacy series and get to know all there is to know about retirement. My name is Joseph Kweku, and I'm the Chief Actuary of State.
Hi, my name is Dillis and I work with Partnerz. Here at Partnerz, we help people acquire knowledge to better their financial life. And we do this through the use of our webinars.
One of the major problems when it comes to investing is people investing without a plan. A lot of people base their investment decisions on what someone has told them.
It's important that you plan for your retirement so that you don't bank your support on your children, your family, or relations, or friends.
Do you know that if you take care of your mom or any other relative aged 60 and above, you're entitled to a tax relief of 1,000 cedis?
As we speak, about 59% of all pensioners on the Smith Bureau are earning 1,000 cedis or less. About 96% of them are earning 2,000 cedis or less.
This is where budgeting also comes in, because you have your revenues and you have your expenses. You need to be able to match your revenues to your expenses to make room to be able to invest to meet your financial goals.
We have a webinar series coming up called the Financial Literacy Series, and this will run from December 2022 up until November of 2023. The first few topics that will be covered between December and March will range from budgeting to understanding tax benefits, investments, estate planning and insurance, and retirement planning.
Our Partnerz webinars came in at a time when I was a financial newbie, started to educate me on the need for financial planning, shaped my attitude towards spending.
I clearly know what I want, how and when I want it, and that clarity commands discipline. I am more than excited to have Partnerz in my journey to financial freedom.
So join me and other qualified professionals and experts in the field in the Financial Literacy Series and get to know all there is to know about retirement. My name is Joseph Kweku, and I'm the Chief Actuary of Smith.
Hi, my name is Dillis and I work with Partnerz. Here at Partnerz, we help people acquire knowledge to better their financial life. And we do this through the use of our webinars.
One of the major problems when it comes to investing is people investing without a plan. A lot of people base their investment decisions on what someone has told them.
It's important that you plan for your retirement so that you don't bank your support on your children, your family, or relations, or friends.
Do you know that if you take care of your mom or any other relative aged 60 and above, you're entitled to a tax relief of 1,000 cedis?
As we speak, about 59% of all pensioners on the Smith Bureau are earning 1,000 cedis or less. About 96% of them are earning 2,000 cedis or less.
This is where budgeting also comes in, because you have your revenues and you have your expenses. You need to be able to match your revenues to your expenses to make room to be able to invest to meet your financial goals.
We have a webinar series coming up called the Financial Literacy Series, and this will run from December 2022 up until November of 2023. The first few topics that will be covered between December and March will range from budgeting to understanding tax benefits, investments, estate planning and insurance, and retirement planning.
Our Partnerz webinars came in at a time when I was a financial newbie, started to educate me on the need for financial planning, shaped my attitude towards spending.
I clearly know what I want, how and when I want it, and that clarity commands discipline. I am more than excited to have Partnerz in my journey to financial freedom.
So join me and other qualified professionals and experts in the field in the Financial Literacy Series and get to know all there is to know about retirement. My name is Joseph Kweku, and I'm the Chief Actuary of Smith.
Hi, my name is Dillis and I work with Partnerz. Here at Partnerz, we help people acquire knowledge to better their financial life. And we do this through the use of our webinars.
One of the major problems when it comes to investing is people investing without a plan. A lot of people base their investment decisions on what someone has told them.
It's important that you plan for your retirement so that you don't bank your support on your children, your family, or relations, or friends.
Do you know that if you take care of your mom or any other relative aged 60 and above, you're entitled to a tax relief of 1,000 cedis?
As we speak, about 59% of all pensioners on the Smith Bureau are earning 1,000 cedis or less. About 96% of them are earning 2,000 cedis or less.
This is where budgeting also comes in, because you have your revenues and you have your expenses. You need to be able to match your revenues to your expenses to make room to be able to invest to meet your financial goals.
We have a webinar series coming up called the Financial Literacy Series, and this will run from December 2022 up until November of 2023. The first few topics that will be covered between December and March will range from budgeting to understanding tax benefits, investments, estate planning and insurance, and retirement planning.
Our Partnerz webinars came in at a time when I was a financial newbie, started to educate me on the need for financial planning, shaped my attitude towards spending.
I clearly know what I want, how and when I want it, and that clarity commands discipline. I am more than excited to have partners in my journey to financial freedom.
So join me and other qualified professionals and experts in the field in the Financial Literacy Series and get to know all there is to know about retirement. My name is Joseph Oku, and I'm the Chief Actuary Officer.
Hi, my name is Dillis and I work with Partnerz. Here at Partnerz, we help people acquire knowledge to better their financial life. And we do this through the use of our webinars.
One of the major problems when it comes to investing is people investing without a plan. A lot of people base their investment decisions on what someone has told them.
It's important that you plan for your retirement so that you don't bank your support on your children, your family, or relations, or friends.
Do you know that if you take care of your mom or any other relative aged 60 and above, you're entitled to a tax relief of 1,000 cedis?
As we speak, about 59% of all pensioners on the Smith payroll are earning 1,000 cedis or less. About 96% of them are earning 2,000 cedis or less.
This is where budgeting also comes in, because you have your revenues and you have your expenses. You need to be able to match your revenues to your expenses to make room to be able to invest to meet your financial goals.
We have a webinar series coming up called the Financial Literacy Series, and this will run from December 2022 up until November of 2023. The first few topics that will be covered between December and March will range from budgeting to understanding tax benefits, investments, estate planning and insurance, and retirement planning.
Our Partnerz webinars came in at a time when I was a financial newbie, started to educate me on the need for financial planning, shaped my attitude towards spending.
I clearly know what I want, how and when I want it, and that clarity commands discipline. I am more than excited to have partners in my journey to financial freedom.
So join me and other qualified professionals and experts in the field in the Financial Literacy Series and get to know all there is to know about retirement. My name is Joseph Oku, and I'm the Chief Actuary Officer.
Welcome back. Thank you guys so much for your patience. Indeed, we've been having a very good and engaging session. And right now we are zooming into the Q&A. You've asked so many questions, so many insightful questions. We'll try and cover as many as possible. So without much ado, let's zoom right back into the final session of today's literacy series. So Zuu, do you have any questions that you have seen that you'd like us to tackle?
I want us to go straight into this one. They say, what's the mark-to-market price which has caused investors to lose their interest and part of their principal?
Okay, so every instrument, including bonds, are traded every day. So investors price these bonds according to the economic conditions of maybe the issuer. So the issuer here being government. So what's happening in Ghana as the risk that government will default increased? I mean, how are investors perceiving our Ghanaian bonds? So that there are prices. So if everybody's selling their bonds off, it means that people believe that the government might default. So it pushes bond prices down and yields up. So they have bond prices and yields have an inverse relationship. So then if, say, I come onto the market and I want to buy a bond and I believe that, the economic conditions of Ghana are not favorable, I'll demand a higher return. So then if I demand a higher return for your bond, it means that you're going to sell it to me at a lower price. So I'm going to buy it cheaply, and then usually these rating agencies also rate the bonds depending on like the same conditions. So then most of Ghana's bonds were rated, they were downgraded almost all the time that the rating agencies came to rate it. So it went further to say that, I mean, there's a likelihood of default. So then return should be higher. So then if you have a bond and then the market is perceiving your bonds this way, then it means that your bonds, when you mark to market, your bonds are going to be cheap. So if you have to sell them now, you're going to lose money by selling because your bonds are cheap. So that's the mark to market.
Okay.
Right? So you're marking your bonds to market. That's what it means. Marking your bonds to market means if you were supposed to go onto the market now to sell your bonds, the price that the market will price your bonds is what you're going to sell your bonds at. So if so on the contrary, if Ghana was doing well and investors saw like a premium in Ghana's bonds, a lot of investors would be demanding Ghana's bonds, which will push the price downwards. Okay. So then Ghana's bonds become expensive. So you might actually gain by selling your bond. That's if the bond is expensive. So if you bought at 100, if your principal is you bought at 100 CDs, now if you decide to go into the markets, because of how everybody's perceiving the Ghanaian bonds, you might even sell it at 120 or 110. You have made a profit. But because of how markets is perceiving the bonds, people are like, yo, everybody wants to sell their bonds. There's so much supply and nobody wants to buy. So you have to bring down the price and increase the return for the buyer. So that's how it comes. So you mark the bonds market.
Yeah, I think an important context to add to that is the alternative to market is mark to valuation, I guess, or mark to maturity. So
amortization.
So so that basically assumes that you're going to hold the bond until the end, and then it takes its value based on the cash streams minus, say, inflation. Whereas the mark to market takes the current price based on risk plus inflation, so risk of default, etc. So when you're in a high distress situation like this, the reason the government forced the bonds to market was because it's unfair to the investors, because they believe that the valuation is high, much higher than it really is. Because in a distressed market, when you try to sell the instrument, you have to take whatever the market will give you, which is mark to market.
Okay. And then Marilyn has a question. She says, will the money not have devalued by then? I mean, with regards to the bond.
Excellent question.
And she adds again, what happens if you refuse to sign up to the new terms? Does your money automatically get enrolled by default?
Okay, these are two very, very, very important questions. Yeah. The first one is, if you have to hold your bonds until maturity, now that the government is saying you have to wait extra time, the value of your money, because of the time value of your money, is less. Yeah. Inflation will mean that over time, over additional time, each additional coupon that you receive will be worth less than it's worth today. If you could take all the money today, you would, because waiting for it costs money. So she's right to ask the question, won't all the money have eroded away by then? In actual fact, if you mark the new bonds at 12% yield to maturity, right? That means the bond is paying out 12% coupon based on the current price, and you're going to hold it to the end and take all the money. If it's paying out 12% yield to maturity, because of anticipated inflation in Ghana, the actual loss is 82%, right? So holding the bonds to the end will cost you money. That means that you have to think about what to do in accepting whether to exchange or to hold your current bonds. The alternative is to hold your current bonds. But if you hold your current bonds, you're gambling that the government will still pay you. If you hold your current bonds, although it's optional, it's not compulsory. The government is telling you it doesn't have money. So if you hold on to your current bonds and the government turns around on Wednesday and says, sorry, we can't pay you, then you have no leg to stand on, because you had the choice. And you said, well, I'll wait and see. I'm rolling the dice. It's very, very, very important. Now, there's a chance. Listen, in Jamaica, 2010, 2013, the holdouts ended up getting paid, right? So the government was like, okay, fine. There's only like 6%, 7%. We'll give them the money. So that could happen. But that's the same probability as the government turning around and saying there's no money, so you get nothing.
Yeah.
So the what you should do is this. I think if you are risk averse, you should exchange into the new instrument. And remember that there's a secondary market. So you can go into the secondary market and sell the new bonds early to receive some of your premium. There is one final angle to consider, which is what Elikem said earlier. There's a chance that, and I've said it before, when this economy starts to do better again, which it will, it doesn't take a lot of money. If you remember at Christmas time, the CD strengthened, it felt like we were rich again.
Yeah.
And Dirty December was lovely because they used a little bit of dollars to push the CD higher. It doesn't take a lot. If we get the IMF deal, the CD will start to strengthen and there's some dollars coming in and the structural change also happens. Then there's a chance that very, very quickly Ghana's economy goes to the roof. If that's the case, you want to be holding the new bonds, right? Because suddenly the new bonds will start to price in really nice returns and then you'll wish that you had exchanged. So those are the new, as a trader, as an investor, you really have to think deeply. Do I want to take the risk that the government will turn around and say there's no money, so you held out, therefore we're going to default on you anyway? Because if the government defaults on the holdouts, let's say there's 15% of them, the government can say, hey, we gave them a chance to restructure, they chose not to, so it's not our fault. I don't feel bad about it, right? So that's the choice that now investors have to make. It's a big risk, it's a difficult one.
Even with the bond, the whole thing, the whole structure with within the bond thing, they are saying that you volunteer to exchange your bonds. So if you don't volunteer, and then they default, they'll tell you that I told you to the volunteer.
Right?
It's voluntary, yeah.
Actually, the voluntary thing is important. There's one other aspect of voluntary which is important, which is that because everyone is voluntarily choosing the new price, it creates stability for the new price. So when the government turns around in 6 months' time, 12 months' time, 2 years' time, and says, I want to make some new bonds, I want to borrow some more money from the market, it will say, well, the price we're offering is 9% because all the bondholders accepted voluntarily to re-rate from 20 to 9. So that's the new price. So actually the voluntary bit, is very important.
You just want to
you
get
all accept
everybody's buy-in.
You all accept it. It's very important.
Okay.
Do you want to should I ask a question?
I'll ask. I'm just really soaking everything in. I'm really excited to be here because everything is finally making sense. So I just want to say thank you so much to our guest. So another question is from Derek. He said, is this exchange program supposed to help the country to be a sustainable economy, or we are here because of mismanagement? That's one question. I feel like we've already answered it, but let's go to it again. And he also said, what about individuals who have bonds through financial institutions? Are they managing investments for individuals who can't buy individual bonds? So that's the question that he was asking.
So you can take one each, I guess. Yeah.
I think I'll take the second one.
Okay.
Touch on the first.
Okay. So the first question is,
asking if we are here because of mismanagement.
Yes,
I think it's a bit of both.
Yeah, I mean, the very simple answer is it's a bit of both. It's basically the 25-year-old who's discovered that he can get a credit card and it's really nice to spend money on a credit card. So he blows out the limit, right? And it's like, oh, shit. Sorry. Oh, no, I've spent all my money. What do I do now? Tries and goes and gets another credit card. Oh, my God, this is amazing. I got another credit card. And then eventually they start to default on the first payment. They can't afford their payments. Then it goes on their credit report record that they didn't pay. Then all the other creditors are like, hey, give me my money back.
Yeah.
Then it goes to the roof. So basically, it's a bit of both. And like we have to learn, our leaders, our people, administrators, civil servants, everyone has to learn to increase transparency and start holding people to account, right? So that people can't just overspend and, leaky money falling off the table starts to end because people are paying more attention. That really needs to happen.
So the second question is, if you have invested through a financial institution, what's the ending?
Are they managing investments for individuals who cannot buy individual bonds, the financial institutions?
Are they managing investments for individuals who cannot buy
individual bonds? Well, let me just read the whole question again.
Yeah.
What about individuals who have bonds through financial institutions? Are they managing investments for individuals who cannot buy individual bonds?
If an individual has a bond through a financial institution, then the individual owns that bond, because you're saying you have a bond through the financial institution. So the system has been set up in such a way that if I go to a financial institution to buy a bond, there's an account that is created for me. It's called a CSD account. So all securities are held, or all investments are held in this account. So if you buy shares, you buy T-bills, you buy bonds, you buy any traded form of instrument or investment, it's held for you in this account.
Yeah.
So this account sits with the Central Securities Depository, which is the short form is CSDs. It's a function of the Bank of Ghana. So your securities are stored there. So if you are an individual that has bought a bond from a financial institution, you should go there and ask them for your CSD account number and then your CSD statement. If it has not been done for you, ask them to create it for you and then put your investments in that account. Because sometimes most of us will not ask. The institution will buy it and hold it for you. But normally, or best practice, you have to own a CSD account and your investment should be placed there. That way, every time interest is paid, it goes directly into your account and all that. So unless you have given the financial institution the mandate to manage your investments for you, you are supposed to have your investments bought for you and saved in your CSD account.
Okay. There's another question here. I think it's a very important question. Do you think the financial crisis will now end up at a point where the government cannot pay wages?
Yeah, that's an important question. So far, we've done really well. We're still paying wages. We can still afford petrol.
Yeah.
If we were to be in a situation where we cannot reach an agreement on this debt exchange program, and the government is not able to get an IMF program before the end of February, then we run the risk of not getting the IMF money before the end of March. And if we don't get it before the end of March, then we won't get it until June, right? And that means that we only have 4 weeks left of import cover. That means there's only 4 weeks left of dollars to buy petrol.
Okay.
So the first challenge we'll face is that we'll run out of dollars to buy petrol. And the CD will go to 16 and then to 18 and then to 20. So other prices will start to blow out. Life will become very, very difficult and much harder than last year, more like Sri Lanka. And then you'll probably get some unrest on the streets. And so people need to sharpen their minds. We've got 2 days left, and we have to the government needs to be able to go to the IMF and say, hey, look, we got 75% or 80%. Because when the local debt exchange has happened, then the external debt holders, the Euro bond holders, will then say, oh, well, the Ghanaian local bond holders accepted what is effectively an 80% haircut, 85% haircut. Therefore, we should expect a very deep haircut too. Then the government can go to the IMF and say, hey, look, the local bondholders accepted the exchange. That means the external bondholders are going to have to accept the exchange too, otherwise it's unfair. And therefore, we have debt sustainability. Please give us the money. If that happens, then they'll keep paying workers. Everything will be fine. If it gets to the point where we can't pay for petrol, Charlie,
that's
anything can
happen. Then that's when the recession
starts. Yeah.
That's the beginning of all.
Yeah, I think the whole thing is perception.
Yes.
Once the investors, external investors, most importantly, believe that we are on the path to recovery and they have the right perception about Ghana, then our economy starts picking up.
Yeah.
They keep dollars in. They start buying Ghanaian, the securities again. They start coming in, pumping their dollars in. That way it shows up the foreign currency level of Ghana and then keeps the city at a good.
There's a really important thing to remember about Ghana. as an economy, even though so much value is being stolen and extracted, it's still we're still net positive country. The only reason we get these problems is because we need to be able to find dollars. And when the city gets weak, we can't find the dollars. But actually, we earn enough money to pay the workers and to ride out these types of crises. And indeed, we only are looking for $3 billion. It's petty change. It shows you actually it's all about perception, all about confidence, and the fact that we're a junior economy and we're not deemed to be mature enough. So whenever we get close to the edge, they put us on detention, right? That's really what's going on.
So I guess that's one of the reasons why they like to massage some of these figures, just for like you said, the perception and the confidence and everything. Yeah. So I want to go into this from one of our attendees. He said, "Thank you for this. Really, I know this is a private broadcast, but can parts of this session be put up online for awareness sake? Because this has some implied directives for us as a country, from the government to the individuals." And it's something for us to consider. And they also said, we'll be glad if you could get a summary, like bullets or points to refresh our memories on the whole session.
Okay. So I think that's very perfect, very timely, because I know Partnerz is going to put up this whole session on their website. So I'll share their socials in a few. But before that, we're about to wrap up. Do you guys have any last words? Can you also share your socials? Where can we find you? Maybe some people want to enter your DMs and ask you questions. What are your final words? Just questions. What are your final words? And then, of course, we'll plug the information with respect to Partnerz. If you want to understand this, what we've discussed in detail, the bulletin points are going to be there. Your questions are going to be properly answered there. But do you guys have any final words before we wrap up?
I think that the perception should start with us. We should just believe that our country will become better. We should all be custodians of our economy. And then let's believe in what the government wants to. Let's give them a second shot.
Wow.
And then let's believe, So we should have a very positive perception before the external people should. So I'm not really big on social media. I've hardly go on my Instagram.
Don't worry, you just ask your questions on the Partnerz website.
Yes,
You'll be answered. Don't worry. They'll direct it to you. Do you have any last words?
I really strongly reflect what Elikem has said. I think Ghana's economy there's a huge silver lining in what is happening right now. Whether by design or just serendipity, we find ourselves in this situation. And it gives us a chance to fix a system that was not working. That's the most important thing. Now, all the young people need to figure out how they can contribute to that. There needs to be an army of young people interested in finance, interested in joining the financial defense force that will start to make this country's economy work better, so we can protect our instruments and protect our finances better. I think that there's a huge chance for us here to take this as a moment where we move to the next level in our development and actually start the journey into becoming a really solid middle income country. And these moments are very important. If you look at Mexico in the Latin American debt crisis, if you look at Asia in the Asian debt crisis, those countries, Singapore, Hong Kong, they're all doing amazingly well. There's no reason why Ghana cannot be there in 10 years' time. Remember, every time you're assessing the country, look back 10 years and see where we were, and you'll see that, oh my God, despite the fact it feels terrible right now, look how far we've come. And then imagine how far we're going to go, much faster, much further, with really smart, brilliant young people. You can follow me. I have a radio show on Asasi Radio, 99.5 FM and online on Thursdays at 7 o'clock. I do lots of other stuff on Asasi Radio as well. PM 7 p.m. on Thursday night. You can listen in, and you can follow me on Twitter at Kweku Adoboli, and Instagram and everything as well. So just my first name and last name.
Thank you so much. So let me just plug you guys in with the social media handles of Partnerz. Please pay attention. On Instagram, we have Partnerz FP. That is PARTNERZ FP altogether. It's the same on Twitter as well. And for Facebook, it's Partnerz with a Z and then space FP. LinkedIn, Partnerz FP Limited. And then on YouTube, we have Info Partnerz. right? And then most importantly, I feel like once you go onto their websites, you can get connected to all of them. So the website is hipartnerz.com. That is HIPARTNERZ.com. And this is where this whole session is going to be uploaded. And there were so many other questions that we're not able to tackle because of time, but those questions can be tackled via the website. So just log on the website, just click around, have some fun. And of course, you see the session there. If you have additional questions, you can ask there and they will be answered. So Zuu, do you have anything else to add?
I think also, yes, don't forget to follow us, Stay by Plan. We have a podcast. If you didn't know, now you know.
Yes.
It's the best podcast in Ghana.
Yes.
And beyond. So follow us on social media, Stay by Plan Pod everywhere. That's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube.
And soon LinkedIn.
LinkedIn very soon, yes. So just follow us everywhere. This session as well will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. So if you see this, you might be watching this even on YouTube. So yeah, just follow us and stay in touch and we'll keep doing more of this. So
yes. This has been very good, very fun, very amazing. And I'm sure everybody's question is, when is the next session? When are we going to have another one? So Partnerz is doing yet another one in February. So make sure you are following them on all social media platforms and going on their websites so you know exactly when in February is happening. Yeah. So on behalf of the Stay by Plan team and Partnerz, we want to say thank you so much for having this conversation with us. Yeah. We definitely are going out of the studio much more wiser, much more positive.
Enlightened.
Yes, much more enlightened, ready to invest in our economy the right way, asking the right questions. And yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah, yes. Had a great time.
And to you, our lovely followers, listeners, webinars, thank you so much for joining, all our attendees, participants, that's the word. Thank you so much for joining. Seriously, this was fun and engaging, and we couldn't have done this without you. So we look forward to seeing you in February for the next session. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Dilys, and I work with Partnerz. Here at Partnerz, we help people acquire knowledge to better their financial life. And we do this through the use of our webinars.
One of the major problems when it comes to investing is people investing without a plan. A lot of people base their investment decisions on what someone has told them.
It's important that you plan for your retirement so that you don't bank your support on your children, your family, or relations, or friends.
Do you know that if you take care of your mom or any other relative aged 60 and above, you're entitled to a tax relief of 1,000 cedis?
As we speak, about 59% of all pensioners on the Smith Bureau are earning 1,000 cedis or less. About 96% of them are earning 2,000 cedis or less.
This is where budgeting also comes in, because you have your revenues and you have your expenses. You need to be able to match your revenues to your expenses to make room to be able to invest to meet your financial goals.
We have a webinar series coming up called the Financial Literacy Series, and this will run from December 2022 up until November of 2023. The first few topics that will be covered between December and March will range from budgeting to understanding tax benefits, investments, estate planning and insurance, and retirement planning.
Our Partnerz webinars came in at a time when I was a financial newbie, started to educate me on the need for financial planning, shape my attitude towards spending.
I clearly know what I want, how and when I want it, and that clarity commands discipline. I am more than excited to have Partnerz in my journey to financial freedom.
So join me and other qualified professionals and experts in the field in the Financial Literacy Series and get to know all there is to know about retirement. My name is Joseph Kweku, and I'm the Chief Actuary of Smith.